Hi everyone, welcome to the Let's Go Zero webinar on embedding sustainability throughout the curriculum. We've got some absolutely fantastic speakers for you today. We're going to start off with, let me share my slides. How's that? Can everyone see? Perfect. Okay, so yeah, as I said, welcome to our webinar today. We've got some really fantastic speakers. We have two teachers for you. First will be Michael Jones from Northfleet Technology College, and then Ed Moore from Dharma's First School. Finally, we have Lisa Atkinson from the Harmony Project, and they're all going to be talking to you about embedding sustainability into your curriculum and some tips on how you can do that. First, for those of you who might not be aware of Let's Go Zero, I'll just give you a very quick background. Let's Go Zero is a campaign uniting schools, colleges and nurseries across the UK to kind of declare their ambition to be zero carbon by 2030. It's like any petition. Signing it is free, and it's just to add your voice and grow the kind of movement for change and show the government that there is demand for help and for funding. We're part of a coalition. You can see at the top some of our coalition members, Global Action Plan, WWF. And by signing up to the campaign, you will receive a lot of support in the form of our monthly newsletter. We signpost to other organisations that will be able to help you. You'll be alerted to some of our competitions, our webinars. There's a lot of free resources on the website, so please do have a look. I will share the link to our website a bit later. So, first of all, we have Michael Jones, the Director of Innovation and Computer Science Lead at Northfleet Technology College. Michael's worked at the school for 14 years, and the school has just done such a great job of linking kind of science, nature, sustainability. So, I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to Michael.
Right, okay, give me just a second, I'll grab my screen. Hello everyone, by the way. So, Director of Innovation, I've only recently been given that title, I think mostly because I can't think of what else to call me. So, it's an interesting day today. I was sharing with Alison a few minutes ago. Today we were told that we've won 3 awards, essentially. One is Beacon School by the Tree Council. One of our students has got a commendation for his Speaking Up for Trees online video that he provided, and we've won something in the Wildwood Kent event. I'm not sure what we won. They said they're still marking, but they want us to come along and receive whatever it is, which is brilliant. But apart from that, there's a serious end to it, and our nature reserve goes under sort of this banner of sustainability, renewability, biodiversity, and community. We're fortunate. We've got a 2-acre site, slightly over, that we call our nature reserve because that's what it is. It has a little fence around it, and it allows us to develop the curriculum, the science curriculum, not just for our school, but also for the primary schools around us. So, for example, today we've had a whole load of Year 5s clambering around in our reserve, seeing what we're doing and doing some real science work. So we set them up on nature trails, bug hunting, flora watching, things like that. So if I'm just going to click on my slides, there we go. So, why? Well, more really, why not? It's a good thing to do. It partly sprung out of COVID, the end of COVID, where we found that putting kids in touch with nature was actually quite a good thing. Yeah, it started to rebuild the social contact skills. And if that was what it achieved, it would have been a good thing anyway, but it's gone on from there. We started off by asking the question, what lives in the reserve? Because we didn't know. You know, we had a fair idea that there'd be bugs and there'd be things in there, but we didn't actually know what was in there. So that's a picture of our reserve from the air. And on the top right-hand side is a bee. The bee is important because that marks stage 2 of our project, which I'll come on to in a bit. So we really do believe that it should be shared with others. We are in Gravesham, so that's North Kent. It's a really densely populated urban area. We get a lot of London overspill, a lot of transients in our school. And the primaries around us really do function in quite small spaces. They certainly haven't got much of an outdoor space. We've got quite a bit of it, so it would be perverse of us not to open up on that. So they come in, they study insect life. We've been very lucky to get over 1,000 trees from the Tree Council and the Woodland Trust. And so, one second.
Interruption. Can Mr. Ray and Mr. Atkinson please come to reception? Mr. Ray and Mr. Atkinson to reception.
Typical, isn't it? Typical. Doing that allowed us to plant way over 1,000 trees. So it meant that in effect what we've done is we planted a perimeter fence of around about 130 meters, which is quite a lot of planting, believe me. And that enabled us to have a whole school event going, because that took a lot of students digging a lot of ground and putting a lot of trees in. But we also got our local farmers involved, and we still do. So they come along. If they plant a tree, we give them a tree back to take to their very small sites. Most of them take them home and put them in their garden, but it extends that link between what they've done with us and what they can do on their home site, which is brilliant. Within the site itself, we have an array of 8 wildlife cameras. That's brilliant, because that means then I get some of my students working on going over getting the micro cards out, editing the footage for us, pulling anything of interest. If I was going to give you one piece of advice for a wildlife camera, make sure that it is not in front of a waving twig, leaf, blade of grass, because you will get many, many hours of pieces of grass just doing that. And that's really boring sitting for it, but you learn, but it's great. So it means we get to see what's going on at night in our reserve, and it's more active than during the day, believe me. There's all sorts of things running around, trying to hunt each other down and so on. The foxes are, as ever, a delight to watch, especially at this time of year. So we've got a number of teams. In our schools, about 1,000 students, and it has to be run. Properly. We can't just do it on a random basis, because we never get things done. So we have our student voice committee, and that's a team of about 15 or so students that help plan all sorts of activities within the school and try and get people motivated. So they will talk to other students and get them involved, so me having to do it. We've got our eco leaders group, again, around about 15 students. And then the name says it, they're our eco leaders. They're the first people in there that are doing any planting or planning, any maintenance, creation of bug hotels, things like that. I also use them. Alison didn't benefit of this because they're all doing exams or they've left, but we usually get our eco leaders taking visitors around the site, and they can give them their perspective just rather than mine. Got our sixth form team, and they've helped us install the solar system. We're working on getting a wind power system in there, and that integrates into the system itself. I was talking to the head of maths today, saying, right, okay, why don't you get your kids over here looking at how much power is generated, how much we need, looking at the efficiencies of solar panels. They don't work above 28 degrees really, which is a real problem. So if we're going into climate change and we're going to have temperatures above 30 degrees centigrade, solar panels aren't going to cut it, which is a little bit ironic really, but there you go. It explains why my weather station, which is remotely powered, keeps cutting out. It doesn't have power because it's too warm. Can you believe it? We want to turn this into a centre of excellence so that all can share from it. So we monitor the climate, and one thing that we found out is that although it's only about 120, 150 yards from us, or meters in new money, the site itself is about 2 degrees hotter than it is in around school, because it's got its own little microclimate in there, and then that gets us thinking about what we can do for biodiversity. Trees, I say there, provide a valuable source of pollen. They do, because we move on to our second stage, which is to install an apiary. We've got everything apart from the bees. Alison, they're still on their way. Yeah, they're still in quarantine, but they will be with us. The idea is that it goes under the banner of ethical entrepreneurship. We've got our local primaries involved, and the idea is that as our colonies split, they will have a hive on our site because we've got the space. They will then get more involved because they will come up on a regular basis to monitor it. We will look after the day-to-day management. And then any income generated from that, from the wax and the honey and so on, we will split between us. So they'll invest their pot of money in sustainability ideas on their sites. We'll use it to maintain our site. Everyone goes away happy. That's the theory, and it will work, I assure you. Oh, there's a short video here, which I just cast. No sound in this, so please no one say where's the sound. And it just gives you a sort of aerial view. You managed to get the school to invest in the drone. There's the wonderful foxes, of course. There we go. And as we get into, no idea what's going on there. I think it's trying to hunt something, to be honest. But it's always very cute seeing the foxes. They're an absolute delight this time of year because they've started eating our cherries now that they're ripening up. Okay, so I'm going to move us on. Oh, no, we've already done that. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, let's go back. You know, and this goes on to the idea that pollination is key to survival. It really is. It's not just bees, you know, but you know, bees are a buzzword, unintended on that. So, and we know that, you know, 90% of wild plants, but 75% of crops depend on pollination of one kind or another. Sort of a roll call, a rallying call there. We sell this idea to people that come in. Because we're a technology college and my subject is actually computer science, I'm really fascinated by the ability for technology to track and monitor what's going on. So you can see it in the top left-hand corner. It's called a bee heart, and it tracks temperature, humidity, sound, and a couple of other things as well, and then reports it back online. And this feeds through to the primaries when we have them in, because they'll be able to monitor their hives using this remotely, so they won't have to trudge up to us. They actually see it in their classrooms. Over on the right-hand side there, that's a bee counter. They really do exist. You put that just inside your hive, it'll count your bees in and out, so you can see how busy you are. Brilliant maths, brilliant science applications within that, you know, without having to do a huge amount of preparation work. This is what our system produces. You can see, so it's got a couple of graphs, and it's also got tabulated data there. You know, what could be better? This immediately goes into science maths. I'll be using it in computer science as well with my kids. That's a good part of the curriculum covered. Health. So again, one of the things that we are doing is we are going to set up an, I'll get the word right, apiology curriculum for our kids. So those kids that have signed up to do the beekeeping, it's not just about them, you know, getting the honey out. It's about them being able to identify diseases and understand the health of honeybees and so on. If anyone can point us to the right direction, we're looking for a good bee venom expert, because that's our next stage to study bee venom. We've got a dedicated website. It's there on the link at the top. Please don't go in, because I'm avidly watching the site, because we're just approaching 5,000 hits. So I want to be there when we get to 5,000. But we've got a subsection on our apiary, so that gives a little bit more information on what we've been doing and information about bees in general. And that's it. So I'll rush through that, maybe, I don't know.
No, that was
excited by this, you know.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Right.
We've had a couple of questions come through, but I think we're going to hold off and wait for questions until Ed has had his presentation. But
No
really, really great. Thank you so much, Michael. It's just fantastic to see how embedded kind of nature and sustainability is.
I get very animated by this, so you have to excuse me. I'll have to have a lie down after this.
No, it's great. I love the enthusiasm. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Ed now. So Ed Moore is a teacher and eco-coordinator at Dharma's First School in Dorchester, Dorset. Ed has built up the eco work at Dharma's over the last 10 years from a blank canvas. Under his leadership, Dharma's First School has won the Eco Schools Primary Eco School of the Year, Surfers Against Sewage Plastic Free Schools Champion, and Jane Goodall Roots and Shoots Best Group in 2019. So I'm going to hand over to you, Ed. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you. I'll
Sorry, Ed, I think you're just on mute.
oh, there you go. Sorted. Great, cool. Yeah, so we've been following the Harmony project for the last 5 or 6 years. We've fully embedded it within our school curriculum. You'll probably hear from Lisa in a bit more about the 7 principles of Harmony, but these are the 7 that we follow, and we take one each half term to embed within our school curriculum planning. And it's all inquiry-based learning, so we always have a question to sort of start off the conversation with our topic. This could be why are the natural wonders of the world worth saving? How can we save our forests from deforestation? And then it goes from there, and it really brings out lots of questioning from the children. They're very inquisitive to find out more about the topic area that they're trying to find out about. And we feel that it has a great impact on the children's thinking and their actions, and the issues that they're facing within school, in the community, and on a global level too. So here's an example of our planning. So we've got our inquiry question, and then we choose one of the Harmony principles, and then we try and think about having partners that come in. So for this one, we had Ocean Generation. They came in to give a talk to the children. And then our sustainability theme is taken from the Eco Schools topics, because I know a lot of you probably go for your green flag, and this is a great way of embedding those topics within your curriculum, ticking that box. But also we find it's an easy way then to be able to put the evidence together for Eco Schools, because we're literally doing it day in, day out, within all our classrooms across the school. And then literally all the planning, it goes through every subject, that question. So for example, how can we make sure our oceans stay amazing? All that question goes through every subject within the children's learning, from our literacy to our geography, history, arts, PE. It goes straight the way through like a golden thread. And particularly with our oceans topic this term, the children learned so much. They loved the book. Somebody swallowed Stanley, and then and Stanley is a plastic bag, and then the children got to be able to change that round, and they come up with their own ideas of a single-use plastic that they could use instead, like a plastic bottle, a cotton bud, a balloon, those sachets, those plastic sachets you get, and they made their own story based upon Somebody Swallowed Stanley. And then also the old famous Snail and the Whale by Julian Donaldson. They wrote their own little diary pretending to be the whale and what they came across in their journey. And obviously this is the second part of the planning that I was talking about. So it literally goes through the science and then the geography all the way through, which is fantastic. And yeah, this is Ocean Generation, teaching the children about the impact and why our oceans are so important. And then these are some written work. So the children in year 3, their inquiry question was why are the natural wonders of the world worth saving? And the children came up with the idea that actually perhaps every county within the United Kingdom, perhaps they should have 5 natural wonders themselves. So they did lots of research of what the 5 natural wonders would be, which really encouraged children to get out into nature at weekends and during the holidays with their parents and their families. And they came up with their own top 5, and then they wrote persuasive letters to Dorset Wildlife Trust to try and convince them that actually this is such a really good idea, and that it would bring in tourism to Dorset, it would bring in financial really, raise money for businesses and things, because tourists are coming in to spend their money. But also it would highlight these areas that we all forget about, and make sure that members of the public and tourists look after these natural areas. Really good project, and Imogen Davenport took her time. She took her time to write back to the children, which was fantastic, and really worthwhile project. And then we focused on some local artist called Gina Marshall, who does lots of art through patterns, and she takes famous Dorset landmarks and draws them a bit like in this style that we can see here on the screen, with lots of swirls, lots of patterns, lots of line drawings, and then children drew their own based on their favourite natural wonder of Dorset. So we had things like Durdle Door and Old Harry's Rock, Dancing Ledge, Chesil Beach, a whole host of different landmarks. And it was just great that, these are all amazing natural wonders that are on our doorsteps, or on our doorstep here in Dorset. And, children are getting out and, visiting them. And, it's great that, they've all been highlighted. And then children in year one, back into their Oceans project, they made posters at school and at home to emphasize the importance of how we should be looking after our oceans, and how we need to be reducing our single-use plastic, and what constitutes what is single-use plastic. And then some facts about turtles and what marine life you can find. And I know lots of children went off to the Sea Life Centre and did lots of research there, and got to see at first hand of what marine life lives in our seas. And a lot of children also went rock pooling as well. So again, it's children getting out into nature and taking what they've learned within the classroom, but then taking it back home, and it's extending what they're learning about. And another poster with great facts as well. And the Harmony Project brings so much, brings loads of benefits to the children's learning. We found that the children are really passionate and confident to speak out about what they believe in and what they've learned about within the classroom, and what they've learned in the classroom they then take back into the community. They feel really passionate about what they've learned, and they feel inspired that if they're connected with something like the natural wonders, or like our oceans, then they want to go out and they want to do more. So they want to go and lobby the community or businesses, or even our local MP, Chris Loader, who gets an awful lot of letters from our children, because they want to make sure that their voices are heard, which is so important. They're determined, and they don't take no for an answer. And they truly believe in what they're doing. They believe that what they're doing is right for themselves, and right for the environment, and for the community. And a lot of what they're learning at school, and what they're developing are skills that they will need in their adulthood. So it's so beneficial. And maybe one day we might see some of these children in the House of Commons, or being part of the town council, or being part of our local county council.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Ed. That's so great to hear. So we've had a couple of questions. So these ones will be to Michael and Ed, but just before we move on to Lisa. Michael, someone asked you, how did the primary schools that you work with become involved?
We aren't an academy chain, but we are a cooperative trust. So 5 of our local primary schools are part of that trust, so we meet on a regular basis. So the message got up for them, but also schools within the sort of wider Gravesham area. For example, we have a school down today that's not part of the trust, but have heard of us. It's partly word of mouth, really. because people do talk. Like I said, it's very built up area, so everyone knows everyone else. And they, they drop us a line. They say, we are interested in that sort of question, and it goes from there. Teaching's a very small world. All teachers know each other in a particular area, so messages pass on, and that's it. It's mostly word of mouth. Some of it is social media, of course. Because we've got a very good person here who puts everything on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all the other social areas. So yeah, it's mainly that.
Okay, great, thank you. And we've heard one. This is to Ed. How does your school juggle day-to-day core concepts whilst also supporting this sustainability curriculum?
What we do is literally everything is embedded within our curriculum. It's part of the ethos of our school. Every child and every staff member know their responsibilities within that. It has taken time. I started this whole journey 10, 11 years ago, and I feel the pain of staff members wanting to do something like this, and it does take time. And there are obviously some teachers that dig their heels in and are quite reluctant to want to take part, and it needs to come from the top, and if from your head teacher and your SLT, and filter all the way down. And obviously you also need like a really passionate eco coordinator or somebody to sort of push it through all that. Keep going. Find the teachers within your school or your college that want to help encourage this, because more voices will make it a lot more easier. And go to your head teacher or your principal in charge and put out your stalls and say why you want to put this through, and then go from there, and it will gradually filter out. Gradually more and more people will come forward and want to take part.
That's great. Yeah, no, really good advice. There's one more for Ed that's just come through. Do you have a designated sustainability lead in the school?
Yes, well, yes and no. Yes, I suppose it's me. I'm the designated eco lead, but we don't have that as a role, like a paid role. It's like a voluntary role. It's I think lots of people forget that actually these roles, they need to be funded, and then if the government wants to realise that it's really important that we meet these stable targets, then eco coordinator or eco lead needs to be recognised, and needs to have a TLR with it, or some type of funding to be able to allow schools to become environmental schools, to put that through, and to value the staff member that's doing it, because actually it is a big job. It's it's a huge job to do. So yeah, I am the eco lead, juggling many hats. So yeah, that probably answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I completely and utterly agree. It does need to be a paid role. And another one for Michael. Someone's asked if you could tell us a little bit more about the ethical entrepreneurship aspect of the apiary project.
Okay, it's quite a simple process, really. The idea is it goes along with sustainability. We hit on the idea of having an apiary. It came from our students, our equal leads, said, why don't we have some bees over here? Brilliant, let's do that. So we went for it. And as we looked into this, we realized that bee colonies swarm. Yeah, they split naturally. Okay, so that means you end up at some stage with 2 colonies, and you've got to do something with the other colony. You can't let it fly off. So you could sell it. Yeah, so that would bring in funds anyway, and they can be quite costly. Or you can set up another hive. So hold on a second. So we've got all of the other schools around us, and we pitched the idea to them. Said, look, we'll have bees, we'll have the land, we'll be able to do the day-to-day monitoring. Do you want to join in? What's to say no to that? Yes, of course we do. So along with that, and so from that means then as we generate income, that'll cover the cost of the hives as we get them in, and so on. Any surplus generated through the sale of honey and wax products and so on. Alice got a very nice candle when she came down. It means that we will over time generate a surplus, which will then be split between the primary and us. So it means we can do our on-site things and, you know, have a steady stream of income for that. The primaries, who are more cash strapped than we are for sure, it means they've got that little extra pot of cash that they can devote to sustainability ideas. So it's small scale capitalism, but we call it ethical entrepreneurship because it sounds better. Yeah.
Sorry,
You're muted.
Yeah, thank you so much. So unless anyone has any further questions, I think we'll move on to Lisa from the Harmony Project. Lisa is the schools coordinator for the Harmony Project. She has a 16-year background in teaching and joined the Harmony Project after learning the approach when it was developed in the school where she was teaching. She's passionate about children's learning, particularly around sustainability and bringing as much learning outdoors as possible. So again, please type your questions for any of our presenters in the chat, and I will pass over to Lisa now.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, let's get this going. Okay, so thanks, Alison. Alison obviously gave a little bit of a background to the Harmony Project, but we are essentially a charity, and our main aim is enriching primary school curriculums in a way that puts sustainability and nature at the heart of their learning. So it's not an add-on, it is what you are doing day to day, fully linked to the UK national curriculum. And we did begin as in a primary school in Surrey. It was actually our charity director was the head teacher of that primary school. He is extremely passionate about environmental issues and saw that we had a whole school full of small people who were going to obviously grow up into adults who could really be empowered to look after our world in a way that, you know, we're at this place in society now where it's very easy for our children to get quite scared about everything that's happening in terms of climate change, and have lots of eco anxieties, and he wanted to turn that around. He wanted to have a whole school full of people who felt empowered to do something better for the world. So just a little nice point here that we're called the Harmony Project because thinking about obviously living in harmony with nature, but also harmony comes from this Greek word harmonia, meaning joined together or connected. So as Ed was saying earlier on, when we are developing inquiries of learning, we are trying to connect all that learning together in a meaningful way for the children, not shoehorning things in because we want everything to fit under the same umbrella, but making that learning purposeful and meaningful for the children. So essentially we are creating a curriculum for schools that puts harmony at its heart, puts nature at the heart, because our natural world works in harmony, and that's what we as humans, but as part of nature, we need to learn from that in order to live in a more sustainable way. So we always like this quote here: if we don't start with the fundamental principles of life, we will go astray. And that's Jim Garrison from the online Ubiquity University. And so what we do at the Harmony Project is we have many inquiries of learning, and each of those inquiries of learning is led by one of the 7 principles that Ed has already mentioned. Now I'm going to focus on 6 of those principles today, and they are interdependence, the cycle, diversity, adaptation, health, and oneness. The 7th principle is the principle of geometry. And the reason that I'm just going to touch upon that one today and not go too deep into it is because when we look at the beauty of nature and the patterns and the geometry within nature, we're doing that throughout all of our inquiries. Whereas the other ones, we tend to connect one principle to an inquiry. So what I'm going to do throughout this presentation is I'll go through each of those principles give you examples of projects linked to that principle. So that would be our inquiry overview of learning, and show you how some of that learning all connects together, and then talk about how we put that into practice, because we believe that meaningful learning is real life, it's experiential, and that's how our children really get the best from their learning. So our first principle is the principle of interdependence, teaching us that everything is connected. I often do this when everything is connected with our younger children. And this is this image here is just an echo of a teaching pack that we created we were collaborating with Reboot the Future, and that's their We Are Antarctica series. We have, as you can see, an overview for year 6 called How Are We Connected to Antarctica? So that's the big question, the big inquiry question, obviously linking to climate change quite heavily, but the children are looking at Antarctica as their sort of main focus for that learning. And I'd like to draw your attention to the 5 elements at the top of this plan here. So we've got our inquiry question, we've got our harmony principle of interdependence, and then beneath that we have a sustainability action. So each of our inquiries has something that we would like the children to do, so feel like they're actually practically doing something within that inquiry, and again, not as an add-on but as part of their learning. So this monitoring the energy use would be part of their maths learning in that half term. The great work is something that the children would be working towards, that happens towards the end of the half term, the end of the inquiry. So they always know what it is at the beginning, because that gives its purpose. You know that the learning that you are doing in that half term is working towards your great work. So in this instance, the children created poetry and posters around We Are Antarctica to display, and I mean, this ice sculptures, if you have the sort of funds and resources, I suppose, to do it. We were very lucky to have a local artist who came in and worked with the children, brought in an enormous block of ice, and the children were able to kind of carve this beautiful sculpture, but then of course see how quickly it disappeared before their eyes, and sort of giving them that sort of understanding of what's happening in our polar regions. And again, as Ed mentioned, Partners in Learning is our final element at the top of this plan here, because as teachers, you know, we know lots, but we can only know so much, and there are so many fantastic experts out there, and we should be drawing on their wonderful knowledge to enrich our children's education. So you'll always see at the beginning of at the top of all of our inquiries those 5 elements, and that's kind of what we feel makes our curriculum unique. You'll also see, if you just look below that, the 6 weeks are separated each with their own weekly question. So it really gives a feel for that week's learning, and it also enables you to go through a journey of learning rather than sort of separating it all out. It kind of flows through that half term. So we've talked about our principle. This is our project here, or an example of a project, and these are our more examples. So before I go on to the practice, these are some examples of other inquiries and other year groups that might be linked to the principle of interdependence. So again, the other thing about having the principles as a framework is that the children are constantly revisiting them. So you can see the progression of their understanding. Children in year 1, for instance, their understanding of interdependence will only grow as they go through to year 6, where their understanding of the principle of interdependence will be deeper and mean much more to them. And then essentially the idea then is that throughout all of that kind of cyclical learning, they're learning from that principle in a way that helps them to understand how they can live more sustainably. So this just gives you an idea. And Michael, we might like to see the why are bees so brilliant? I thought you'd like that one. That's one of our year 2 inquiries, you know, where the children are learning from the bees, and there's so much that we can learn from them, and they, you know, they really enjoy that one. Okay, so going on to the practice element of this particular inquiry, these are some of our year 6 students, and part of their maths learning was to monitor the energy. Now, again, we were lucky, we had a connection with a company called EcoDriver, who installed transmitters or something that they're called into our school that enabled the data from our energy use to be transferred into charts that were child friendly for children to use. So they were able to log in, they could go to, you know, main school block or whichever part of the building they wanted to check, and they could see over the term, over the week, over the day, what our energy use was. And so it was real life for them. It's actually what we're doing. There are other ways of doing this if you don't have those opportunities of having a system like that. But essentially these children were then feeding back to the rest of the school saying, well done, this part of the school, you've used only this amount of energy this week, but, you know, C block or whatever you want to call them, you need to think about what you've been using, you know, what you've been using, and if you've been leaving anything on, those sorts of things, because your energy use has rocketed this week. And so then they really had that understanding of, you know, what our baseline usage was, and they could help even us as teachers to understand about how to use energy in a you know, in a purposeful way and not waste it, basically. And of course our business manager liked it because it saves money as well. So moving on to the second principle, the principle of the cycle, thinking about cycles within nature. You know, there's no waste in nature, and this is what we want to start thinking about in our lives. We want our children to start thinking about their practices in cyclical ways. So this gives an example of a year 1 inquiry, which is my favourite, wildflower and why, where the children are, of course, through science, obviously learning about the plants element of the curriculum. So they're learning about those types of cycles, but essentially they are starting to learn to think in cyclical ways, and they're planting their own wildflowers. They are observing wildflowers within their community, possibly within their grounds. There's a really important element to this, and that is that it's done within the summer term when they're actually going to be able to do these things. So not very much point learning about wildflowers at a time where it's seasonally not right. So we like to really think about that as well when we are developing our curriculum, that, you know, what's the right season to do it in. So there's our project. This gives an example of other inquiries that you could link to the principle of the cycle. So thinking about the solar system and those cycles, and how actually this kind of macro massive part of our world, our universe, has an impact on our, you know, our little lives, if you like, our, you know, the macro and the micro, and obviously linking to our national curriculum as well. And thinking about rivers and our river systems, you know, that actually our children need to know, you know, maybe they might live near a river, they might not, but I imagine those children would essentially come across rivers at some point in their lives, and they need to know that these rivers should be bursting full of diversity, which we'll come on to as well, biodiversity. They should be bursting to the seams with that, and actually our rivers are becoming they're dying, you know, there's not enough life in our rivers to sort of or our rivers are too dirty and too polluted to sustain that life. So that just gives you an example of ways in which we can develop that cyclical mindset. And our practice here, so our sustainability action, linking to waste, linking to cycles. This is a photograph of some children who we're helping out with the composting at school, and I know that Ed does this within his school as well. You know, it does get stinky, but they are involved. They are taking the compost, the food waste from the kitchen into the composter. Again, you can, you know, you can do this in many ways. So you can have yourself a compost heap, and obviously you need to then manage what's going in it to ensure that you don't attract pests that you don't want. Or you can go the other end, which I know Ed has got, the a sort of a big composter that sits above the ground. There's one that's called a Redan composter, and you put everything in it, and the children turn the handle, and then obviously eventually you're getting the compost out of it, and then the children use the compost to plant new foods to grow, and then hopefully we can use some of that food growing from the grounds into the kitchen, and they see that cycle. And it just, once you've got that system in place and you've got those inquiries in place, then it works, because it's not an add-on. You're not trying to find an extra member of staff or extra time in order to do it. And you get the children sitting in the lunch hall, and you can just say, and that you might not be growing enough to feed everybody, but you could say to them, you know, we're eating potatoes today that we've grown in our grounds, and perhaps you might have those particular potatoes on another plate, so the children know that they can try the potatoes they've grown. Obviously, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could completely sustain ourselves? But if you're thinking, gosh, this feels too big, there are ways that you can do this in sort of smaller doses, if you like. So the next principle is the principle of diversity. It's good to be different, I say to our younger children. Diversity is needed to make any system resilient. You know, we don't all want to be the same. We need that to survive. And this is a year 3 inquiry. So why should we protect the biodiversity of the rainforest? I won't go through all the elements again, but you get the idea now. And some more examples of how to link your learning to the principle of diversity. So rainforest is a fantastic one, but also thinking about diversity within us as people and within the children. How can they be sustainability champion? You know, what is it that they can bring to the team? They can all bring different things to that team, and that's what's going to make it stronger. Diversity gives us strength. And our action for this is biodiversity. It is promoting, protecting, celebrating biodiversity. And this was a project that we did in a local area just by the car park. The children came and planted the wildflower seeds. But what they were learning there was that they were increasing the biodiversity within the area. And the 4th principle is the principle of adaptation. So what's my little saying for adaptation? Changing to make everything work better. So thinking about how we adapt, how we survive, but also this principle gives us the opportunity to think about our place and our locality. So adapting to where we live and our local area, which is really important for our children to understand their own place in this world before they can start to understand the world as a sort of bigger picture. And this is one of our inquiries that links to World War II. What would it be like to live during wartime? So of course you could, you don't necessarily have to link this to World War II if you don't want to. It might be that you don't use anything of ours below weekly question, and actually you're just thinking about, you're inspired by one of our inquiries and how it links to the harmony principle, because you know, you might look at other wars, you might be looking at actually perhaps more recent events. It's up to you how you know, we're not a scheme of work, because it's really important for these inquiries to work for your school. We work with schools in urban areas, we work with schools in rural areas, teeny tiny schools to really big, you know, quite big primary schools, and they will all need to do these things slightly differently to make it work for their place. Here's some examples of some other inquiries that would link to the principle of adaptation. So what lives outside our classroom? This is a reception inquiry where they're literally thinking about that local area just outside the door of their classroom, you know, and finding out what is it that lives there. They're exploring that outside space and getting to know the other living things that surround them, that are with them, and they're just starting to get that understanding of, actually, we are part of nature. We're not separate from nature. We are part of it. Leading down to, you can see the Romans and the Vikings there, so drawing out those national curriculum links as well, and just generally thinking about how we can adapt our learning to our place, and the children developing their identity to that place for our own survival. And this really links well to the sustainability action. This is the project element of our 3 Ps, our principle, our project, and our practice. Sorry, this is the practice element of that. Community and adaptation, so working with the community, and again bringing in those kind of experts, bringing in people within your community that might enrich your learning, or just sharing your learning with your community. This is a year 6 child with one of the kitchen staff. They made soup out of the vegetables that were grown in the grounds, and they invited all the grandparents in for a harvest celebration where they served them some of their soup. The 5th principle is principle of health, so thinking about healthy systems and generally how do we make ourselves and the world feel well. So nature is inherently healthy, and it can teach us how to be well. These are 2 children from a school in South Africa that we work with, enjoying their outdoor learning. So here's a year 2 inquiry to give an example. What do I need to be healthy? Where their great work was to prepare and share a healthy seasonal meal. So throughout their learning, they're learning about local food, seasonal foods, and what they need in order to keep themselves well. But of course, as they move through their year groups, other inquiries, perhaps in their year 3 health inquiry, will be slightly different. They might be looking at the health of nature, they might be looking at health of something else, trees or whatever it might be. But they're always returning back to that principle of health. Here we go. So here's some examples. So healthy ways to travel, playing. In some of our younger year groups, we'll be thinking about how playing can enrich our health, our not just physical health, but our emotional, our mental health, looking at nature's habitats and their health, and looking at energy and how that links to our health. So kind of all connecting everything there. I've just added this one in because this is some quotes from children. So finishing that sentence, the world will be well when, and then they had to finish it there. So I think that I just found that very inspiring to read that. That's what our children were coming up with. Leading into the practice element. So here's our sustainability action, food and health, teaching our children, again, and this links with the principle of the cycle as well, about what they're eating is really important and where it comes from. Lots of our children don't know where their food comes from past the shops, and actually that's what it is that we need to be teaching our children as they are growing up. So the final principle I'm going to talk to you about today is the principle of oneness, and thinking about the fact that we are all one in nature. We've talked about that before. We are part of nature, we are not separate from nature, and that's what we need our children to know as they're growing up into adults. So the way in which we incorporate this into our learning is to really value the quiet times, those still times. Perhaps it might be some sort of mindfulness, some meditation that you just incorporate into your day in school, however small it might be. So here's an example of an inquiry. How did the ancient Egyptians live and work in harmony with nature? And this is a good one to explain this, because when I've talked before about the fact that our inquiries are linked to the national curriculum, you can see there we've pulled out that element of the ancient Egyptians, but we're looking at it through the lens of oneness, through the lens of sustainability and nature, rather than just kind of looking at ancient Egyptians generally and being able to, you know, pick out tiny elements of everything about the ancient Egyptians. We're thinking about just one element of that and really going deep into that. So, you know, how they lived, how they survived, you know, living along the Nile, growing their own foods, living in harmony with nature, essentially. So that's what I mean by when we're linking to the national curriculum, but we're going deeper into sort of one element of it rather than a sort of sprinkling of a bigger picture inquiry or bigger picture topic, if you like. And here's some more examples of inquiries that might link to the principle of oneness. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to move on. Linking to our sustainability action of well-being and oneness, so thinking about the children's well-being and giving ourselves time to nurture that and look after ourselves, and you know, that sort of spiritual element, I suppose, of feeling at one with the world. So this just gives you a little bit of an overview. This is a real kind of practical document that plots the inquiries that we have and the principles that they link with. So you can see that the principles are repeated every school year, not necessarily at the same time, because it's going to be quite tricky to be able to do that, because you've got to think about your seasonality and your inquiry linked to your seasonality. Just moving that from year 3 to year 6 there, just to give you a bit of an idea of the sorts of inquiries that we have or that you could use. And this looks at it in a slightly different way. So this is looking at picking our inquiries that are specifically linked to sustainability themes. So this one being climate change and energy use. And this is how our children through reception to year 6 would experience a sort of an element of learning about climate change and energy use, obviously in an age appropriate way. And this is one for biodiversity. So you can see that that element of that sustainability theme is drawn out through different principles, through different inquiries, every school year. Oh, and there's another one there. There's our food and farming one.
Lisa.
Yeah, stop, don't I?
Oh, no, this is fantastic. It's so good. I've just seen a question come through, though. Is it okay to ask it just in case people have to go at 5?
Go for it, yeah.
Someone's asked, in regard to the sustainability goals, has it been a useful process when connecting these to the national curriculum? Are there any that are difficult to make relevant or pertinent to the national curriculum?
That's a really, really good question. I wouldn't say difficult necessarily, because when you sort of go into those foundation subjects, in some ways our national curriculum can be quite vague, so you can sort of pick those, you can apply it in the ways that you want to. Obviously with science, that in some ways has been somewhat of a challenge in some inquiries, because the science is linked by year group and by unit. So what we've done sometimes is we've pulled out elements from a couple of units and put them in together if they fit. Can't think of an exact example now, but so that it makes sense more to the children, rather than, you know, having this wonderful inquiry about trees, for instance, and then going on to learning about electricity, because that's what you do at that time in your school. You know, just thinking, okay, let's just spend a bit more time thinking about this and putting the work in to make sure that this is meaningful. So no, it has worked, but also other schools might have schemes, for instance, that they use, and we're not saying, you know, that you can't do that. There needs to be that element of work-life balance, of course. So schools can sort of pick and choose elements that they would like to from this. If you know that you're in a school where you have to stick to a scheme, then that's real life. We know that happens, but that's kind of why we're here, so that we can work with schools and support them through that process and kind of get them get their sort of curriculum, if you like, right for them, and then they can fly with it, hopefully.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I'm very conscious that it is just
I
on
don't think I
5.
have much more. There we go, just a nice little quote there, and that was the end.
We will be we'll be putting all the links underneath the recording when it's uploaded onto the website tomorrow, so you can find any websites on our site, and we'll have put the links there. Very, very quickly, I'm just gonna close off by saying, first of all, thank you very much to all of our speakers. They were really, really amazing presentations, and I think it's just, yeah, it's just fantastic to hear about the work that schools are doing. And Lisa, that was like a very, very good in-depth, yeah, just really, really helpful, so schools can see the support that is out there for them. And finally, just before we go, we haven't confirmed dates for our next webinars yet, but the topics will include greening IT and operations takeover. So please do keep an eye out on our website for when those will be. And finally, if you would like as I say, that the links and the recording of this webinar will be on our website tomorrow, along with a lot of other resources and signposts to other organisations. And please don't hesitate to get in contact. There's our email address, our website, and our Twitter. So finally, again, thank you so much to all of our presenters, and thank you, everyone. I'll see you soon.
Thanks.